So, in typical Robbie fashion, he's given us an extremely broad subject to talk about: renewing the workforce, recruit, retain, redeploy, and re-engage all at once. Half an hour, 15 minutes actually I'm looking at now, sorry. Let me just set the scene. I know some of this has been covered already this morning, so we may be going over some other ground, but we are living in such a complex world at the moment, and I know that's been done to death, but the complexity and the forces that are acting on the world of work are huge. Even if we just look at things like, the requirement for short-term performance versus long or medium-term sort of skills development and reskilling. We've got companies who are still making layoffs at the same time as hiring, and hiring for different skills and looking to sort of renew their workforce at the same time. So we've got all that going on, and then HR is in the middle going, what do we do? So that's the context I'd like to keep us in, if we can, and I know that's pretty broad, but if we can just kick off, Joanne, I'm going to start with you, and maybe just to set the scene and go, what is the number one thing that you're thinking about, as the HR director at Microsoft at the moment around your people?
I guess, like a lot of people and a lot of companies, I suppose, it's about thinking through now the work environment and the employee experience in a kind of a post kind of COVID world. So we've done quite a lot of work in terms of putting in some structured listening programs to understand the employee experience and understand, why are people coming into the office? What do they want to get out of it when they come in? What's important to them? So some of the things that we found that was quite interesting in our research was that, they love having a very energetic office design. They love having a sense of community, coming in and connecting with people. They love the flexibility that they have, and that their manager, like we heard earlier today, plays a really important role. So they're the sorts of things that we're kind of looking at, and different elements just to kind of keep us fresh, because expectations have changed. Yeah,
very good. Caoimhe, what is it for you?
Well, for me, maybe a slightly different context. The company that I work at is a software business, but we've been created by the merger of multiple software businesses over the last sort of 3 to 5 years. So we're also going through quite a big business transformation. So I think we've got the challenge of bringing together, 3 different legacy companies, connecting around one purpose, one shared set of customers, one vision, and all of the challenges that come with that. If anybody's, ever done any M&A, you understand that. And at the same time, we're actually transitioning our business model fundamentally. We're quite an old software company, spun out of Cambridge University in the UK 55 plus years ago, and now we're having to transform to stay relevant for our customers. So there's a whole change in our business model. We're becoming a platform where people can consume. Software is in the cloud, software as a service. So there's a whole change in how we operate the business and the challenge of bringing these multiple different stakeholders together. So it's a lot of change and transformation, and keeping people through that. Easy
enough then. Yeah. Okay, thanks. Anne, what's on your mind at the moment? What's the Monday morning fear that you have when you go, no, go on.
So a lot. One of the things that I'm navigating is that I'm 10 months in Lingus, so it's a brand new company for me. But everybody knows Lingus, everybody knows our journey. And COVID was obviously an exceptionally difficult time. So from a business perspective, we are just about out of intensive care. Yep. We are beginning to the green shoots of making some.
Sorry, we're audio problems.
Oh dear.
You're gonna have to say all of that brilliant stuff again.
Say it all over again.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Can you remember it?
Nope.
No. Okay. Don't worry. Most of them didn't hear it.
Great.
Yeah.
So I have a lot on my mind, was what I was saying. I'm relatively new to Lingus. I'm only there 10 months, so that's a lot to learn anyway. But Lingus is an iconic brand, and everybody knows the journey that we have been on. So through COVID, obviously, like many companies, we had a really, really difficult time. So what's on our mind at the moment is coming out of COVID. From a business perspective, we are focused on some massive change. So we're putting in a lot of fundamental sort of change management differences in terms of digitalization of our employee journey, and in terms of getting our fleet back up and running. So from the people perspective, when I layer that on top, there's a lot for us to sort of think about. We have this wonderful intergenerational groups of people. So there's folks who've been here through, they've all the scars of 9/11, and they've been around for a very long time. So there's a lot of people who've seen this and been resilient and figured it out. And then we've got a lot of new people, because we need a lot of new skills. And they're bringing a lot of new shiny things like information around SAF and how to be sustainable. So the biggest thing for me is to put in a lot of fundamentals from a HR perspective, like our business strategy is. So digitalize HR, make sure that we have good, efficient processes. But equally, and like you heard earlier, we need to nuance all those employee journeys to make sure that the rich history and the brand new shiny things, everybody is working well together.
Very good. And what are you all doing with the other 4 days of your week? Sorry.
Golf.
Hilarious HR jokes finished now. So, but the one thing that we touched on a little bit with a couple of you there was, well, we can't leave COVID behind, can we? Like, we've tried, I was kind of hoping we wouldn't have to talk about that again, but it keeps rearing its head. But one of the other sort of, I suppose, outcomes from COVID is we've got people who are in the workplace. We've got this multi-generational workforce now. Engagement is a big issue across loads of businesses. I think Johnny mentioned it earlier around, we've actually got low turnover of staff, low attrition. But like the engagement of the people that are actually in those businesses is a problem for organizations. And then you layer on the fact that we've got 5 generations at work now, and how do you create engagement programs that fit all of those different generations? So a really easy question. Kiva, any thoughts on how you're doing that, or that's in your mind?
That is absolutely the challenge. You're right. It's been a while since we talked about COVID, but it does still impact us because we've been very sensitive around sort of return to office for lots of reasons. We do have a position that we're hybrid, so we're absolutely
Sorry.
Do I need the mic as well? Yeah. Let's see. I was just saying that, post-COVID, it's still a theme, right? Because you talk about a multi-generational workforce. Different generations have different expectations and need different things out of work. We've taken a sort of high-level position that we're hybrid, right? We're a knowledge worker business. We're a software business. You can absolutely do your job from home. But we do want an element of in-office, and we're struggling with the same thing. What are the reasons that people want to come in? But more importantly, what are the reasons that people need flexibility? And it's very different depending on which generation you come from, right? We see people staying in the workforce longer, and I actually think that the post-COVID flexibility is enabling that as well. There are many reasons. There's the economic necessity. We have most of our employees, or our largest country by employee base is the US, and people are definitely working longer there, partly for reasons of financial necessity, but also because I think the flexibility has enabled that in a way that maybe wasn't possible before. We have all generations in the workforce. I was saying earlier, even in my own team, I have people in their early 20s, and I have some folks still in the workforce in their early 70s. So, but which is great because that is reflective of our workforce then. So having a HR team that, spans all of the generational divide, I think we should be using to help us think about the needs. And that's how we're, when we think about designing programs, tapping into different generations' needs.
Joanne, any thoughts on the intergenerational workforce? How do we keep that engagement, or how do we build engagement programs that speaks to everyone?
Hopefully my mic is working. If not, I'm singing.
Go with the mic.
Singing. I'm going to sing. From I suppose an intergenerational workforce, like we've over 96 nationalities in the Dublin office alone, like the full spectrum from your college hires, your graduates, right the way through to people who have been there kind of from the original kind of founding days that Microsoft was in existence. But what we're starting to actually look at now is this whole notion of thriving, and doing a lot of research on what does that mean, and what is it in our culture that we need to kind of put together to make thriving come alive for our employees. And fundamentally, it's about enabling people to pursue their talents, to do things that they enjoy, to do meaningful work, and to be energized by that. So that's something that we're looking at in our employee experience survey. And a lot of the external research actually suggests that if you're thriving, you probably have employees that are more productive, more creative, that work together and collaborate, but also things like your work-life balance is better. And then things like you're less likely to kind of hit things like burnout. So, we deliberately kind of curate the whole employee experience around what are those things that enable those employees to thrive.
And like the word thriving is really interesting. So you might just keep the mic because I'm going to come back to you. Sorry.
I'm not ever yet.
You're not getting away with it that easy. Like the word thriving is really interesting because I suppose, again, the point of it is people can thrive in different ways, and kind of how it means to you, and what kind of gets you going is different to what gets Anne going.
What's interesting is that obviously we have a massive sample size. We've over 200,000 employees, close to 4,000 here in Ireland. And it's about using the data. So actually the thrive metric and the factors that drive thrive can vary depending on the team that you're in. So for an engineer, there might be a different thing. But like the role of the manager is really important, or having autonomy might be really important. So that's where the metric is kind of interesting. And even things like we then take sort of that sentiment data from Thrive and then correlate that with kind of the data and the footprints that we have about how people are working through our workplace analytics and Microsoft 365. And say, for example, we found that employees who thrive and have high work-life balances, they're doing 3 things. They're working, their work week is 5 hours shorter. They spend 3 hours less collaborating. And if I asked you here, how many of you would take time out in your day to spend on a key task or focus hours of at least kind of 2 hours? Hands up, many of you do that? That is the single most important thing you can do for your well-being, to block out that time so that you can focus, get your work done, and do the things that are important. So they're the 3 things that we've looked at, both in terms of the sentiment, but also how it impacts then the behavior. What are the patterns that you need to do and the practices that you need to take?
So that's like a little bit of encouraging self-care and, and also creating a model that can speak to anybody and they can pick it up how they want, And intergenerational, multi-generational workforce, engagement, how are you handling that?
So we have a really, really rich workforce as well. A little bit like Kiva, we have a gentleman who celebrated 50 years from the date of his first job in Lingus quite recently. I'd love to say it was before I was born, but it wasn't. But and then we have people who are, apprentices who are coming out of school. So I have huge respect for intergenerational expectations being different. When I'm Gen X, when I started work, you were told by your manager what to do, and you said, absolutely, sure, no problem, what else? The folks who are coming in now have very, very different expectations. The Gen Zs, I can't even begin to imagine what the Alphas have after this. We'll put that out to next week. But they have very different expectations, and we need to acknowledge them and figure them out. So there's I look at the employee value proposition quite closely, and I use that as a good barometer. So I kind of see it in 4 sections. The first is pay and benefits, the basics, and it was spoken to earlier when we were talking about nuancing the workforce. Pay, benefits, and conditions. Everyone expects that. That's all I expected when I started work. That's table stakes. Yeah. Next one, growth and development. If we got some, 20 hours of training during the year when we started work, that was lovely. Table stakes. So now we're into the 3rd section, which is collaboration and community, and then purpose and mission and values. So the new generation expect all of those very differently, and we need to find a way to put all the rich history and knowledge together with all the new experiences. Simple things like reverse mentoring, just educating people and just talking about it, just talking about how people's expectations are different. And we also need to really, I've a huge heart for our manager population, and again we spoke about that earlier this morning. they're seriously burdened with now being a financial advisor and a philosopher. And, oh, by the way, I do a bit of performance management and have 4 conversations a year. And if you don't mind, also strategic planning. We need to simplify and use technology to get all that out of their way so that all the people are talking to each other again and role modeling and learning.
Yeah. A couple of things, like I love the idea of reverse mentoring. I don't know if everybody's heard of that, but I think Mary Collins might be in the room somewhere. She was the one that put me onto that. And I think my reverse mentor is somewhere at the back there, Neve, if you... Oh, there you are. Hey, Neve. Neve is teaching me all the Gen Z terminology, so we'll just do a vibe check on that later on, Neve. Yes. Come on. I'm telling you. Oh God, I've lost my train of thought now. But the bit you touched on there, though, and again, I know it's been touched on, but the management level is getting squeezed. It's getting pressure for performance. Again, I said it at the start, and then the pressure from underneath to create, my bespoke workplace, please, if you don't mind. And like you say, be a counsellor, be a financial advisor, et cetera, et cetera. What are you all doing around trying to equip your managers with the tools, skills, knowledge, whatever it is that they need? Because the big thing that seems to be talked about now is not do more with less. It's like, can we just get these guys to do less? Because they are maxed out. So what's happening in all of your 3 businesses around that, around supporting managers and from a HR point of view?
Yeah, we are trying to be much more thoughtful about what we push to managers. It is really the hardest, particularly if you're a middle management player coach, it's really the hardest role in the organization. Somebody said it earlier, at the intersection of strategy and execution. And then, very good, well-intentioned HR folks are building programs and training and frameworks and toolkits, and all in the spirit of being helpful. But we're really at risk of overwhelming our managers in terms of what we expect them to do. So really not stopping building all of that, but stopping pushing it at people constantly and telling them that they need to do this week, and they need to do this month, and they need to do that. And really saying, okay, we're going to build all of these resources, but how do we make sure that we're smart about them being available just in time, at the point that an individual needs it? And not all, 1,000 managers need the same things at the same time. But we need to build all of those resources, but we need to be much more thoughtful about how we're deploying them so we don't overwhelm people. And that's a conversation I'm having a lot in my team right now.
Joanne?
So for us, we're putting a lot of effort into kind of building their capabilities, but also being very explicit about what we expect of them. And so we ask our managers to do 3 things. The first is to model. So be a great role model, both in terms of your own self-care, your own kind of well-being. The next one then is to coach. So if you think of ask great questions, help people work through and have a plan for their work. And then the last one then is care. And the care then revolves around not just the individual in work, what's unique to them, but also what's going on in their lives at home. And how can you kind of help them and kind of create the space for them to kind of be themselves and have the environment that kind of brings out the best in them. So we do a lot of work as well. I think I mentioned about community. We bring our managers together on a kind of a monthly basis, sometimes virtually, once a quarter it's together. And a lot of it, actually, from a HR side, we actually don't have to do too much. Just by getting them together, there's kind of there's power in that alone for them to connect and share their experiences, and the tips and tricks around performance management or even career development, whatever is the topic of the day for them.
So +1 to both of the things that you've said. In Ulster Bank years ago, we launched ESS and MSS, so Employee Self-Service and Manager Self-Service, all together, all at once, all at the same time. And one of the things we realised really quickly, and from a very, very practical perspective, was what will we teach them first? And the first thing was, I think it was March, we're not going to teach folks how to do year-end stuff on the new system now. So exactly as you're saying, just dropping it in just in time. And there's no reason why technology cannot take care of that. So we don't have all the data points, certainly, in our Lingus. I'm so excited about what AI will be able to do, but there's no reason why at some point technology can say, there's Anne Kiely, she's been a manager for 12 years, she has 2 superstars on her team by the look of it, let's push something to her to make sure that she's doing career mobility with those folks at that moment in time. So I think we need to do that. To your point, Joanne, when we were in Twitter, we created that community of managers, and it was absolutely exceptional. And I was probably the person who was most worried about it. So we opened up a sort of a Slack channel and put every single people manager in the organisation on it, and I literally broke out in a sweat. I said, what if they teach each other the wrong? What could go wrong? What if they teach each other the wrong things?
Yeah.
So I'm happy to say I've never been so wrong. It was an absolutely rich experience. Of course it was curated, and of course there were some folks that we needed to course correct with some of the information. But actually the community that they created amongst themselves was exceptional. And learning from peers is so much prettier than learning from HR and being told.
They're all living it every day, aren't they? So it's more kind of just in time with them than anybody else,
100%. Yeah. And you see the great behaviours and the role models coming through, and then people gravitate towards those managers and learn from each other. So at our Lingus, we're at a slightly different part in our journey. What we've done the last year or two is kind of level set the playing field, because we've such a mishmash of managers, older, newer, experienced, less experienced. So we've put everybody through a leadership development program. We've upskilled everybody on what engagement and great action planning looks like. And from this year on now, we're going to begin to build that community and put everyone together and let them elevate and percolate and let the good stuff come out.
Very good. One last thing I want to talk about quickly just before we wrap up. And we talked about promoting psychological safety in work when we were having a chat in advance of today. And again, specifically maybe looking at managers and going like, how do we give those individuals that feeling of safety in their roles? Because again, they're in that sort of pressure zone, they're right in the middle of everything. How do we kind of promote that in a really positive way and make sure they're feeling that?
Okay, I'll go first and then we go. So psychological safety is really, really important, and in our Lingus, safety is our first value, and we do it all day, every day, and twice on a Sunday. But in fact, the word psychological safety can be a little bit off-putting. So in terms of creating a culture, I picture a 2x2 model, which is strong to weak and positive to negative. You want positive and strong, and that's consistent values being shown and recognized. So I think what's really important from a psychological safety perspective is to call it trust, to call it create a trusting environment, and then to really arm our managers to do that. But then it's a two-way. It has to be a two-way accountability. So while employees can hold managers accountable to create that, and we HR help them, managers can and should hold employees accountable to do the same and have a trusted environment to create that.
Okay. Anything from you, Keogan, on that? Or?
Not so much.
I would say for us it's two things. Like, we know psychological safety is a huge factor in team effectiveness, and there's probably two aspects of our culture that are really important. The first is around having a mindset that's grounded in kind of growth and development. So I'm sure you've all heard of Carol Dweck's growth mindset. That's kind of a core cultural principle that we have, which kind of celebrates and encourages experimentation, learning, failure, all of that. So it kind of makes it easier for people to kind of to contribute, to challenge the status quo. And the second element then is around obviously all your efforts in terms of inclusion. So making sure that people have a sense of belonging, that they can be themselves at work. And we have a very simple expression, I suppose, that summarises it all, which is, come as you are, do what you love. And the more that we can kind of create that space for people to do that, I think it makes it a little easier.
I don't think they were the lyrics from the Nirvana song, were they? Come as you are, do as you...
Maybe.
Anyway,
that's right.
I misremember. Last one, and really quick fire now. So just one last tip for the audience on, promoting engagement in this, complex world. What would you leave the guys with?
Oh, you've got to listen to people, however you choose to do it, however you choose to understand. It's really that simple. You've got to create multiple channels to do that. The engagement survey isn't enough, whether it's quarterly, whether it's annual. It's not the only way to listen to how people feel. So just find multiple different ways to keep taking that pulse and understanding, and then close the loop, react, respond, show that you're listening,
the most powerful thing you can do, I think.
I was going to say the same thing. Listen and use your data and things like that. But I think it's just about create the space for them to tell you and the framework to have the conversation.
So similar theme. The best feedback I ever received was to get out of my own way, which it was rich and really, really welcome. And I think that's what we should do, is just get out of people's way, listen to them, learn them, and actually allow them to do what they feel is going to be something that changes the organisation.
Brilliant. Okay, well, I'm going to leave it there. With that, can you put your hands together? Thank Anne Kiely, Keogan, and Joanne Morrissey. Thank you very much.